Morning, guys. What is it about Wednesdays, and am I alone in it? I find Wednesdays to be the toughest day of the week. It's only 7:30, and I feel like I have to put myself in timeout. I'm just like yelling at my kids. People are hungry, have stomach aches, don't have a diaper. I mean, what does this look like? Fighting over books? Can't put up, it's crazy. I'm drinking tea. It should be stronger. I need something stronger. And then I'm just trying to fact check something for the website this morning. And as I'm pulling up the articles, I just need one little fact. The pop-up ads keep blocking me, so I can't actually read what I need to read. And then they're doing those ads where you have to scroll down to see the actual article. Who thinks this actually works? Who thinks that's good for anybody? It's so frustrating. This is one of the reasons why I created SmartHER News. But sometimes it's a struggle. Trace, what are you doing? Can you just say good morning like a normal human being? He's like, Mom, I'm 4. Like, what do you want from me? We're going to have a busy morning. We've eaten 3 pieces of avocado toast. Clearly my kids are starving. Anyhow. Okay, we have a couple of news items today to get through that I think may or may not even be mentioned in the news. And I just want to put them on your radar. There are like a couple different stories that will deserve a deeper dive later on, but just should sort of, again, be on your radar right now. A few of them have to do with the economy, one in particular about jobs. So why don't we start there? One of the things you'll see on our website today is a quote about debt and the amount of debt that the United States is incurring. Yesterday, for the first time, it crossed $22 trillion. What's $22 trillion between friends, right? At a certain point you look at it, you're like 19 trillion, 20, 21. At a certain point it becomes meaningless because it's so big. The reason why the debt matters is clearly there are some economists that really believe we are on an unsustainable path when it comes to debt. There are others that believe that we're going to be able to use debt to our advantage. These are two very different ways of thinking about debt in the economy. I won't get into them right now, but in general, there is a concern about just like a family taking on too much debt, that the country takes on too much debt. And during a time, it's fine when everything's going okay and you can keep your payments, your low payments going, right? It's not fine when there's a crisis. And that's the biggest concern for the American economy, according to the economists that are very concerned about debt. There are groups, nonpartisan groups, that want to help solve this problem. And listen, they try to lobby Congress, just like any sort of lobbying group. But the amount of time that's spent on debt versus the amount of time that Congress spends our money is just disproportionate. So there are those that also believe that the tax cuts put through by President Trump have added to the debt. And in the short term, there's been less revenue that would be brought back to the government. But there are then the economists that say, well, in the long run, this is going to be better for the economy and more advantageous because you're going to have more people spending money, more payroll taxes that are going to be collected, and that'll be good for the U.S. economy. I just want you to know that this debt is not impersonal to you. Debt is sort of like a spider web. Everything's in a strange way sort of linked. So as borrowing costs go up for one group, they in turn can then go up for other groups. So one of the concerns is that with the amount of debt that America is carrying, that it'll be more expensive for you to borrow, when you need to borrow. Maybe not immediately, but down the line. And so that's one of the major concerns when it comes to debt in the economy. But $22 trillion is a lot. It's a lot. And so just want you to kind of keep an eye on that, okay? Not much you can do about it right now. I know we're all paying our taxes wondering, where does the money go? But that's what's, one of the major issues for the economy. The second thing I was looking at is one of the most unglamorous jobs reports that the Labor Department puts out there. You probably don't hear about it very often because in general, looking at it every other month is, it's just a snapshot of job openings. It's called the JOLTS report for short, and it looks at job openings. The thing about economic data, even the data about debt, is you have to remember it's backwards looking. So even what I'm telling you is outdated because the debt's even higher right now than it was yesterday, and the job openings may change. But as of December, the final day of December last year, we had more job openings in America than we had unemployed people. And typically it's reversed, but last year during 2018, in general, there were more job openings than unemployed. And you could say that's great. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a sign of a strong economy. You have job openings in construction and a lot of the service industries. The question then becomes for economists is when does it become also a strain on the economy when companies really need these jobs filled to produce what they want to produce? And when does it mean when they can't fill the jobs that it actually slows their production, which slows our economic growth? And so it's sort of like a double-edged sword. You both want to see a lot of job openings, but you don't want to see too many where companies are hurt because they can't fill those positions. So some of the areas where there is job growth is construction, service industry. Areas where there's not is manufacturing. Some will say in general, well, look at the job growth in America is low-wage jobs, but this report tended to show that there are some, more of those medium-range, pay jobs, like in the financial industry that are also growing as far as job openings. So it's sort of an interesting report, and again, something that we don't see all the time, where there's more job openings than there are unemployed people. So that's something I think you should know. A couple other things just to have on your radar today, and this is, again, something I'd like to look in a little bit more. If you like to hike, if you like to hunt, if you're a big outdoors person, you should know that the Senate yesterday passed what the Washington Post is calling the most sweeping conservation legislation that we've seen in a decade that no one's talking about, right? Now, it's not an official law yet. It hasn't gone into law. It has to go to the House, so it's not like a done deal, but it has sweeping bipartisan support during a time when we don't have a lot of bipartisan support. And what it does is it protects certain new areas of wilderness in America. It expands other areas like Joshua Tree National Park, for example. It puts up new Civil War monuments, and think about that not necessarily as a monument, as a statue, but preserving a battlefield, for example. Civil rights activists are included in this kind of protection under what would be, I guess, the National Park Service. So it's a really interesting legislation. If any of you are bow hunters out there, I don't know too much about bow hunting. I wish my husband was here so I could ask a question about it. But apparently this is going to allow you to take your bow into national parks to get to certain areas where you can't hunt. And it's also going to say that you can hunt and fish in areas, in basically any area in a national park, unless it specifically says that you cannot. There are those that didn't like this bill. Senator Mike Lee out of Utah didn't like this bill because he felt it made it too easy for the federal government to take more of what should be, public or private land. He was concerned about that, but in general, it has a lot of support. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We'll see what happens with the House, and when it becomes something real, then we can actually dive in. I'll tell you where some of these expansions are. So that's the other thing I think you should know. And a couple just quick notes. One of the big deals about Joaquin Guzman, he's El Chapo, the guy that is the head of the Sinaloa drug cartel. He was on trial in New York City. We talked a lot about him in the past several months. He was found guilty on all charges yesterday. I think what's really important to know about him is the Sinaloa drug cartel is thought responsible for 25% of all drugs that come into America. So it's a big deal that he was convicted. We don't know what his sentence is. It'll likely be life in prison. Doesn't necessarily stop the drugs from flowing, but it can be looked as a victory as far as getting a bad guy and putting him behind bars. That sort of ties into what's happening with the border right now. You have the president not super happy with the border funding bill that was brought together by this bipartisan group of lawmakers, but it looks like he's going to sign it. And it would provide 50 miles or so of some sort of border barrier, not the 200 miles that he'd like, but it looks like we're not going to be going to a government shutdown. A lot more debate to be had about what's going to happen at the border, but I don't know about you. I'm kind of ready to table the lawmaker debates, the political drama, and let's go back to really talking about what's happening at the border and border security and what's important for the American people. What I was thinking? I wanted to ask you a question on this. I think there is a regional part of this conversation. If you're in Texas and you're close to the border, you will have a different point of view than someone that lives closer to where I live, which is close to Austin. And I'm curious about that, about how much you think regionalism affects this. I feel like there's so many different stories, whether it's the vaccination story, measles out of Washington State, whether it's the question of socialism and the rise of an affection for socialism amongst some Americans, or border security. like how much our ideas changed when you see these things up close. Like how much does your opinion about vaccination change if you see someone with smallpox or you see someone with the measles? How much does your opinion about border security change if you live in a border town or, work in a border town or work in a border area? How much does your opinion of socialism change when you actually live under it? And so I think there's a couple really interesting themes that I'd like to explore in our newsletter about that this week. I'm sort of thinking about that because I think there are a lot of stories that are percolating where, we're litigating or debating things in theory. And I just wonder how much it changes when you're up close to that. That's all. Let me take a quick look on the website. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. One thing I think is really cool is there's a discovery, another World War II ship that was discovered by Paul Allen, the former Microsoft founders team. Paul Allen, of course, passed away, but his team is still looking, and they found this incredible ship, the Hornet, that has been lost 3 miles under the ocean surface. So that's kind of cool. Check that out today. And I really want your opinion about the dog who won the Westminster Dog Show. Totally not related to anything important in your life, but I'm just curious what you think about it. Okay, guys, we have some fun content planned for Valentine's Day. I'm going to get my kids, they have to make little Valentines for a little class that they go to. So I'm going to get started on that. And they've been in the playroom quietly playing. So see what happens when we get together. The world starts looking better. That's what happens. Hope you guys have a great Wednesday. Have your coffee, have your tea, maybe something stronger. I'm not here to judge. I'm not. And visit smarternews.com. Real quick, some of you asked for the sources of where we get our stories on our website every single day. If you click on the card, you'll see a longer article that we have used, one of them to base some of our information on. We don't post every single article we use because that would be ridiculous, but just the good ones that we think would provide some good information for you. So if you have time today, go ahead and check that out, and have a great day, guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow.